Chapter 7. The husband and the lover kiss each other. He was in terrible haste to find out. This morning I was so overwhelmed. This morning I hadn't the time to realize the position, he thought, recalling his first sight of Lisa. But now I must find out. To find out more quickly, he was on the point of telling the driver to take him to Trusotsky's lodging, but on second thoughts decided, no, better let him come to me, and meanwhile I'll make haste and get this accursed legal business off my hands. He set to work feverishly, but this time he was conscious himself that he was very absent-minded, and that he was hardly capable that day of attending to business. At 5 o'clock, when he went out to dinner, he was struck for the first time by an absurd idea, that perhaps he really was only hindering the progress of his case by meddling in the lawsuit himself, fussing about in the law courts, and hunting up his lawyer, who was already beginning to hide from him. He laughed gaily at his supposition. If this idea had occurred to me yesterday, I should have been dreadfully distressed, he added, even more gaily. In spite of his gaiety, he grew more and more preoccupied, and more impatient. He fell to musing at last, and though his restless thought clutched at one thing after another, he could arrive at nothing that would satisfy him. I must have that man, he decided finally. I must solve the riddle of that man, and then make up my mind. It's a duel! Returning home at 7 o'clock, he did not find Pavel Pavlovitch, and was extremely surprised, then extremely wrathful, and later still, extremely depressed. Finally, he began to be actually frightened. God knows how it will end, he repeated, as he walked about the room or stretched himself on the sofa, continually looking at his watch. At last, about 9 o'clock, Pavel Pavlovitch appeared. If the fellow were trying to dupe me, he couldn't have caught me at a more favorable time. I feel so unhinged at this moment, he thought, his confidence completely restored, and his spirits rising again. To his brisk and cheerful inquiry why he was so late coming, Pavel Pavlovitch gave a wry smile, seated himself with a free and easy air, very different from his manner the night before, and carelessly threw his hat with the crape on it on another chair close by. Velchaninov at once noticed this free and easy manner, and made a note of it. Calmly, without wasting words, with none of the excitement he had shown in the morning, he told him, as though giving a report, how he had taken Lisa, how kindly she had been received, how good it would be for her, and little by little, as though forgetting Lisa, he imperceptibly turned the conversation entirely on the Pogoryeltsevs. What charming people they were, how long he had known them, what a splendid and influential man Pogoryeltsev was, and so on. Pavel Pavlovitch listened inattentively, and from time to time glanced up from under his brows at the speaker with an ill-humored and crafty sneer. "You're an impulsive person," he muttered, with a particularly disagreeable smile. "You're rather ill-humored today, though," Velchaninov observed with vexation. "And why shouldn't I be ill-humored like everyone else?" Pavel Pavlovitch cried out suddenly, just as though he had only been waiting for that to bounce out. "You're at liberty to please yourself," laughed Velchaninov. "I wondered if anything had happened to you." "So it has!" the other exclaimed, as though boasting that something had happened. "What is it?" Pavel Pavlovitch delayed answering for a little. "Why, our Stepan Mikhailovitch has played me a trick. Bagautov, that elegant young Petersburg gentleman of the best society." "Was he not at home again?" "No, this time he was at home. For the first time I was admitted, and I gazed upon his face. Only he was dead. What? Bagautov is dead? Velchaninov was awfully surprised, though there was no apparent reason for his being so surprised. Yes, for 6 years, our true and constant friend. Only yesterday, almost at midday, he died, and I knew nothing of it. I was going maybe that very minute to inquire after his health. Tomorrow there will be the service and the funeral. He's already in his coffin. The coffin is lined with crimson-colored velvet trimmed with gold. He died of brain fever. I was admitted to gaze upon his face. I told them at the door that I was an intimate friend. That was why I was admitted. What's one to think of the way he's treated me now? My true and constant friend for 6 long years. I ask you that. Perhaps it was only on his account I came to Petersburg. But what are you angry with him for? Laughed Velchaninov. Why, he did not die on purpose. But I speak with my heart full of regret. He was a precious friend. This was what he meant to me. And all at once, quite unexpectedly, Pavel Pavlovitch put up his 2 fingers like 2 horns on his bald forehead and went off into a low, prolonged chuckle. He sat like that, chuckling, for a full half-minute, staring into Velchaninov's face in a frenzy of malignant insolence. The latter was petrified, as though at the sight of some ghost. But his stupefaction lasted but one brief instant. A sarcastic and insolently composed smile came slowly upon his lips. "What's the meaning of that?" he asked, carelessly drawling the words. "The meaning of it is horns!" Pavel Pavlovitch rapped out, taking away his fingers from his forehead at last. "That is, your horns." "My own! Generously bestowed," Pavel Pavlovitch said, with a very nasty grimace. Both were silent. "You're a plucky fellow, I must say," Velchaninov pronounced. "Because I showed you my decorations? Do you know, Alexey Ivanovitch, you'd better offer me something. You know I entertained you every blessed day for a whole year at tea. Send for just 1 bottle. My throat is dry." "With pleasure. You should have said so before. What will you have?" "Why, you. Say we. We'll drink together, won't we?" said Pavel Pavlovitch, gazing into his face with a challenging, but at the same time strangely uneasy look. "Champagne?" "What else? It's not the time for vodka yet." Velchaninov got up deliberately, rang for Mavra, and gave instructions. "To the joy of our delightful meeting, after 9 years' absence," said Pavel Pavlovitch, with a quite superfluous and inappropriate snigger. "Now you, and you only, are the one friend left me. Stepan Mikhailovich Bagautov is no more. As the poet says, 'Great Patroclus is no more, vile Thersites still lives on.'" And at the word Thersites, he poked himself in the chest. "You'd better hurry up and speak out, you swine. I don't like hints," Velchaninov thought to himself. His anger was rising, and for a long time he had hardly been able to restrain himself. "Tell me," he said in a tone of vexation, "since you accuse Stepan Mikhailovich," he could not call him simply Bagautov now, "I should have thought you would have been glad that the man who has wronged you is dead. Why are you angry about it?" "Glad? Why glad?" "I imagine those must be your feelings." "You are quite mistaken about my feelings on that subject. As some wise man has said, 'A dead enemy is good, but a living one is better.'" "But you saw him living every day for 5 years, I believe. You had time to get tired of the sight of him," Velchaninov observed, with spiteful impertinence. But you don't suppose I knew then? You don't suppose I knew? Pavel Pavlovitch blurted out suddenly, just as though he had bounced out from behind a corner again, and as though he were delighted to be asked a question he had long been waiting for. What do you take me for, then, Alexey Ivanovitch? And there was a gleam in his face of something quite new and unexpected, which seemed to transform his countenance, till then full of spite and abjectly grimacing. Is it possible you didn't know, then? Said Velchaninov, disconcerted and completely taken by surprise. Is it possible I knew? Is it possible I knew? Oh, you race of Jupiters! For you a man's no more than a dog, and you judge all according to your own petty nature. I tell you that. You can swallow that! And he banged frantically on the table with his fist, but was at once dismayed at the bang, and began to look apprehensive. Velchaninov assumed an air of dignity. Listen, Pavel Pavlovitch. It's absolutely nothing to me, as you can see for yourself, whether you knew or whether you didn't. If you didn't know, it's to your credit in any case, though. I can't understand, however, why you've chosen to make this confidence to me. I didn't mean you. Don't be angry. I didn't mean you, muttered Pavel Pavlovitch, looking down. Mavra came in with the champagne. Here it is, cried Pavel Pavlovitch, evidently relieved at her entrance. Glasses, my good girl, glasses. Splendid. We ask for nothing more, my dear. And uncorked already. Honor and glory to you, charming creature. Come, you can go. And with renewed courage, he looked impudently at Velchaninov again. Confess, he chuckled suddenly, that all this is very interesting, and by no means absolutely nothing to you, as you were pleased to declare. So much so that you would be disappointed if I were to get up this minute and go away without explaining myself. I really shouldn't be disappointed. Oh, that's a lie, was what Pavel Pavlovitch's smile expressed. Well, let's come to business. And he filled his glass. Let's drink, he pronounced, taking up the glass, to the health of our friend departed in God, Stepan Mikhailovich. He raised his glass and drank it. I'm not going to drink such a health, said Velchaninov, putting down his glass. Why not? It's a pleasant toast. I say, weren't you drunk when you came in just now? I had had a little. But why? Nothing particular, but I thought last night, and this morning still more, that you were genuinely grieved at the loss of Natalia Vasilievna. And who told you that I'm not genuinely grieved at the loss of her now? Pavel Pavlovitch bounced out again, exactly as though he were worked by springs. And I didn't mean that. But you must admit that you may be mistaken about Stepan Mikhailovich. And it is a grave matter. Pavel Pavlovitch smiled craftily and winked. And wouldn't you like to know how I found out about Stepan Mikhailovich? Velchaninov flushed. I tell you again that it's nothing to me. Hadn't I better chuck him out this minute, bottle and all? He thought furiously, and he flushed a deeper crimson. That's all right, said Pavel Pavlovitch, as though trying to encourage him, and he poured himself out another glass. I will explain at once how I found out all about it, and so gratify your ardent desire. For you are an ardent man, Alexey Ivanovitch, a terribly ardent man. Only give me a cigarette, for ever since March, here's a cigarette for you. I have gone to the dogs since March, Alexey Ivanovitch, and I'll tell you how it's all happened. Listen. Consumption, as you know yourself, my best of friends," he grew more and more familiar, "is a curious disease. Consumptives have scarcely a suspicion they may be dying tomorrow, and then, all in a minute, they're dead. I tell you that only 5 hours before Natalia Vasilievna was planning a visit a fortnight later to her aunt, 30 miles away. You are aware, too, probably, of the practice, or rather bad habit, common in many ladies, and very likely in their admirers as well, of preserving all sorts of rubbish in the way of love letters. It would be much safer to put them in the stove, wouldn't it? No, every scrap of paper is carefully stored away in a box or a nécessaire, even docketed in years, and in months, and in series. Whether it's a comfort to them, I don't know, but, no doubt, it's for the sake of agreeable memories. Since only 5 hours before her end she was arranging to go to visit her aunt, Natalia Vasilievna naturally had no thought of death to the very last hour. She was still expecting Koch. So it happened that Natalia Vasilievna died, and an ebony box, inlaid with mother-of-pearl and silver, was left standing on her bureau. And it was a charming box, with a lock and key, an heirloom that had come to her from her grandmother. In that box, everything lay revealed. Absolutely everything. All, without exception, with the year and the day. Everything for the last 20 years. And as Stepan Mikhailovich had a distinct literary bent, he actually sent a passionate love story to a journal. His contributions ran into the hundreds. To be sure, they were spread out over 5 years. Some specimens had been annotated in Natalia Vasilievna's own handwriting. A pleasant surprise for a husband. What do you think of it? Velchaninov reflected hurriedly, and felt sure that he had never sent Natalia Vasilievna a single letter, not a note of any kind. Though he had written twice from Petersburg, his letters, in accordance with a compact between them, had been addressed to the husband as well as the wife. To Natalia Vasilievna's last letter, in which she had decreed his banishment, he had never answered. When he had ended his story, Pavel Pavlovitch paused for a full minute, with an importunate and expectant smile. "Why do you give me no answer to my little question?" he brought out at last, with evident anxiety. "What little question?" "Why, the pleasant surprise for a husband, on opening that box." "Oh, what is it to do with me?" exclaimed Velchaninov, with a gesture of disgust, and he got up and walked about the room. "And I bet you're thinking now, you're a swine to have shown me your shame. You're a very fastidious man. You are." "I think nothing about it. On the contrary, you are so much exasperated by the death of the man who wronged you, and you've drunk so much wine, too. I see nothing extraordinary in all this. I quite understand why you wanted Bagautov alive. And I am ready to respect your annoyance. But... And what did I want Bagautov for, do you suppose? That's your affair. I bet that you were thinking of a duel." "Damn it all!" cried Velchaninov, growing more and more unable to control himself. "I imagine that a decent man, in such cases, does not stoop to ridiculous babble, to stupid antics, to ludicrous complaints and disgusting insinuations, by which he only degrades himself more, but acts openly, directly, straightforwardly, like a decent man." "But perhaps I'm not a decent man." That's your affair again. But in that case, what the devil did you want Bagaltov alive for? Why, if only to see a friend. We'd have had a bottle and drunk together. He wouldn't have drunk with you. Why not? Noblesse oblige. Here, you're drinking with me. In what way is he better than you? I haven't drunk with you. Why such pride all of a sudden? Velchaninov suddenly broke into a nervous and irritable laugh. Damnation! Why, you really are a predatory type. I thought you were only the eternal husband, and nothing more. What do you mean by the eternal husband? What's that? Pavel Pavlovitch suddenly pricked up his ears. Oh, it's one type of husband. It would be a long story. You'd better clear out. It's time you were gone. I'm sick of you. And predatory? You said predatory. I said you were a predatory type. I said it ironically. What do you mean by a predatory type? Tell me, please, Alexey Ivanovitch. For God's sake! Or for Christ's sake! Come, that's enough! That's enough! Cried Velchaninov, suddenly growing horribly angry. It's time you were off. Get along! No, it's not enough! Pavel Pavlovitch flared up. Even though you are sick of me, it's not enough. For we must drink together, and clink glasses. Let us drink together, and then I'll go. But as it is, it's not enough. Pavel Pavlovitch, will you go to the devil today, or will you not? I can go to the devil, but first we'll drink. You said that you would not drink with me, but I want you to drink with me. There was no grimacing, no sniggering about him now. He seemed all at once entirely transformed, and to have become, in his whole tone and appearance, so completely the opposite of the Pavel Pavlovitch of the moment before, that Velchaninov was quite taken aback. Do let us drink, Alexey Ivanovitch. Don't refuse me, Pavel Pavlovitch persisted, gripping his hand tightly, and looking strangely into his eyes. Clearly there was more at stake than merely drinking. Yes, if you like, muttered Velchaninov. But how can we? There's nothing left but the dregs. There are just 2 glasses left. It's thick, but we'll drink it and clink glasses. Here, take your glass. They clinked their glasses and emptied them. Since that's so... Ah! Pavel Pavlovitch clutched his forehead in his hand, and remained for some moments in that position. Velchaninov had a feeling every moment that he would speak out and utter the very final word. But Pavel Pavlovitch uttered nothing. He simply gazed at him, and smiled again, the same sly, knowing smile. What do you want of me, you drunken fellow? You're playing the fool with me! Velchaninov shouted furiously, stamping. Don't shout! Don't shout! What is there to shout for? Cried Pavel Pavlovitch, gesticulating hurriedly. I'm not playing the fool! I'm not playing the fool! Do you know what you are to me now? And he suddenly seized his hand and kissed it. Velchaninov was utterly taken aback. That's what you mean to me now. And now I'll go to the devil as soon as you please. Wait a minute! Stay! Cried Velchaninov, recovering himself. I forgot to tell you. Pavel Pavlovitch turned back from the door. You see, muttered Velchaninov, very quickly, flushing crimson and looking away. You must be at the Pogoryeltsevs tomorrow, to make their acquaintance and thank them. You must... Certainly, I must. I understand that, of course. Pavel Pavlovitch acquiesced with the utmost readiness, waving his hand quickly, as though to protest that there was no need to remind him. "And besides, Lisa is very anxious to see you. I promised her—" "Lisa!" Pavel Pavlovitch turned back. "Lisa! Do you know what Lisa has meant to me, and means? Has meant and still means!" he cried all at once, almost frantically. But of that later. All that can be later. But now, it's not enough that we've drunk together, Alexey Ivanovitch. I must have something else to be satisfied." He laid his hat on a chair and gazed at him, gasping for breath a little as he had done just before. "Kiss me, Alexey Ivanovitch," he suggested suddenly. "You're drunk," Velchaninov declared, stepping back. "Yes, but kiss me all the same, Alexey Ivanovitch." "Oh, kiss me! Why, I kissed your hand just now." For some minutes, Velchaninov was silent, as though stunned by a blow on the head. But suddenly, he bent down to Pavel Pavlovitch, whose face was on a level with his shoulder, and kissed him on the lips, which smelt very strongly of spirits. He was not, however, perfectly certain that he had kissed him. "Well, now! Now!" Pavel Pavlovitch cried again in a drunken frenzy, his drunken eyes flashing. "Now I'll tell you. I thought then, what if he too? What if that one, I thought. What if he too? Whom can I trust after that?" Pavel Pavlovitch suddenly burst into tears. "So you understand. You're the one friend left me now." And he ran with his hat out of the room. Velchaninov again stood still for some minutes in the same place, just as he had done after Pavel Pavlovitch's first visit. "Ah, a drunken fool and nothing more." He waved his hand, dismissing the subject. "Absolutely nothing more," he repeated energetically as he undressed and got into bed.